Shamu, everybody. What is this? Part 7? I think we're on part 7 of the history of the left-hand path and where we're going now. So we've talked about Blavatsky, we've talked about Crowley, we've talked a little bit about Arthur Avalon, and now we're moving on to another occultist of the early 19th century. We're starting to jut up on the mid-1900s, where there's going to be a lot of familiar names. I do want to reiterate going forward, I am not calling anybody on here out, and it is not my intent to make your experience walking your path feel worthless. I am here to provide, the aim is to provide a historically accurate chronology. It won't be in this video, maybe a little bit, I don't know, some of y'all go wild with resources. This name may pop up as a bread and butter. It might actually for some of y'all. But after this, we're going to be getting into territory of very common names that most people will know. And I want y'all to keep in mind, this is just bearing a chronological history with a little context of the people and the terms they're using. That being said, we are on, I believe, part 7, where we're going to talk about the 1920s. And we're going to talk about Dion Fortune. And Dion Fortune was an occultist who came from the flavor of occultism of the Golden Dawn and wrote quite a few books. 3 books in particular that we want to focus on today. That's going to be Sane Occultism, The Mystic Kabbalah, and Practical Guide to Psychic Self-Defense. Or The Psychic Guide to Practical Self-Defense. But that's where we're going to see the next iteration of the idea and the next speaking and writing on the left-hand path. We're going to see kind of jumping, we're going to kind of boomerang this timeline, because we hit Dion Fortune, we hit someone else, and then we come back to Dion Fortune. So I'm going to do all of Dion together. So in 1929, Dion releases the book Sane Occultism. In chapter 12 of Sane Occultism, she writes on the left-hand path. With notable lines such as, the initiate of the right-hand path is God-centered, the initiate of the left-hand path is self-centered. Drawing this distinction, and again, like Crowley did, cementing the left-hand path as a moral category in the British occultism. It is self-centered, it is shortcut-seeking, it is the black occultism, involving drugs, hypnosis, exploitation, versus a deity-centered, a God-centered right-hand path. Here is where we really see, and this is a definition that we will see downstream in modern day, where you ask, what's the difference between right-hand path and left-hand path? And some will say it is about God or the self. Now, it does turn to self-power instead of self-centered, but this is kind of a rhetorical formula that's going to come in a couple people. There's going to be a couple videos before we get there. But so in Sane Occultism, Dion Fortune is writing for the layperson, for the everyday occultist, brings up the fact that this is how the left-hand path is, this is where the deviation is. Now, there is a through line that then happens where a fiction author also jumps in and starts to play with the zeitgeist of this. That's going to be covered in the next video, or the video after, if this becomes a 2-part. But then we boomerang back from 1929 to 1933 with the Mystic Kabbalah, where Dion Fortune, coming out of occult Kabbalah, kind of pulls things into a framework to delineate certain different things here. So anyone familiar with Regardie, familiar with the middle pillar, familiar with these things, are going to kind of twig to what's going on here. Where in mystical Kabbalah, Dion Fortune writes that there is a left-hand path that leads to Keter, the Keter of the Qliphoth, which is the kingdom of chaos. What this starts to do is kind of map this left-hand path into a kind of qliphothic side of the tree. Now, we are not yet at the Qliphoth that we know. That is another video I have done on the Qliphoth, but we are not there yet. What we're doing is we're giving, Dion is giving the phrase a clear Kabbalistic topology. So the left hand, this is where we get the idea of the left hand being severity, of the Qliphoth, of the premature mysticism, being kind of the Keter of the Qliphoth. The left-hand path presides up to the top through the left. So what happens is we also draw the distinction of the right hand of the tree being the pillar where the left hand is the pillar of severity, the right hand is the pillar of mercy. Dion Fortune lays out what that looks like traveling up that and with its shortcomings, and where we get this idea that the best way to traverse this is to seek a middle path, where we start to see the middle pillar within the tree right there, and where we really work with the idea of the lightning bolt, where going up, we hit these and we keep a balance. And so Fortune writes a lot about this. And this is something that she fixes firmly into this ethical and practical system, and with a couple clever rhetorical flourishes, finds a way for us to talk further, where Crowley put this as, this is just a moral thing. This is just a moral choice that is made. This is just, we see it by seeing the evils of the works. Dion Fortune takes that, grows that, and links this idea together to form a bit of a soul-wise and symbolic-wise and universe-wise, here is what is occurring. We are seeing Malkut in its lowest aspect, abutting upon the Qliphoth, and the chaotic force rises as the serpent from the world of shells. Now that idea of the world of shells is hearkening back to the Lurianic idea, the Lurianic and the Cordovan view of the Qliphoth. This is going to have to become a two-parter video too. Sorry, there is so much to discuss in all of these. I shall return shortly.